that the United States has its own critical supply.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Cantwell. Senator Cantwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just would be remiss if I didn't say something about Senator Murkowski's comments this morning and working with everybody. There's a great article in the Times this morning about the smart grid legislation that we worked on together. And so it's good to know that people are finally seeing the remnants of that legislation that we worked so hard on and we all worked so hard on actually become law, and now people in the community realizing how we can take it and move it forward. Hopefully you'll get a chance to check that article out. Governor Granholm, congratulations on your nomination. And already I can see just from the questions you've had, got a sense of vast issues of energy policy challenges facing America. You and I had a chance to talk about Hanford. But I just wanted to reiterate being one of the largest projects in the entire world. Hanford is the federal government's second largest obligation after Social Security and health care. So it is, as I mentioned to you, often that administrations come in and try to do it, cut corners or do something. Last year, the Trump administration proposed funding at 46% below what DOE was needed for the tri-party agreement compliance. So I hope that you can commit to putting forth a budget that helps DOE keep its milestones that are laid out as part of a tri-party agreement.
You have that commitment.
I'm sorry.
I talked over you. I said you have my commitment.
Thank
my
you.
commitment.
Well, a lot of people at home are listening. I just want to make sure.
Yes, yes. I get it.
In addition, I want to give credit to Secretary because he and his team did make significant progress on the construction of the facility that Senator Wyden was commenting on. So one of the next challenges will be to meeting what is a 2023 tri-party agreement deadline of getting that facility online. I hope that that's something that we can meet, and I hope that you will come to the Tri-Cities as soon as possible to see this facility.
I'd very much like to do that.
Thank you. As far as workforce safety, that is a major issue at Hanford. The Hammer facility helps training and skilling of a workforce to continue to be ready to meet all the challenges at Hanford. I hope supporting that.
Yes.
And then I do just in the debate conversation we've been having. You know, our national laboratories play a pretty big role in the next generation of energy policy, enabling one particular project, the grid storage launchpad at the Pacific Northwest Laboratory is really important in doing the next level work on commercialization of long duration grid scale storage at 1/10 the cost of today's lithium-ion batteries. So I hope that these projects at our national laboratory like grid launch will be priorities for you, and so will the funding.
Absolutely. Very excited about it.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Cassidy. Sorry for that delay. Senator Cassidy, you're online. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Governor. Thank you again for our phone conversations. I enjoyed them. And I know that you and I have discussed the benefit of those whom I represent. I'd like to go over some of the same things we discussed, because I think there's kind of a question before the American people. Does the Biden administration actually care about their jobs? You had mentioned that the Biden team will have, in response to Senator Barrasso, will have a SWAT team to make sure that folks are employed. I'm thinking they have a SWAT team to take out some jobs. So the Keystone XL pipeline, 11,000 people are fully or partially unemployed. You had mentioned that ideally we replace those with green jobs. Mr. Buttigieg, when he was in testimony today, that those jobs will not come online quickly. Gina McCarthy in another interview said that the American people have sacrificed enough. We should not ask them to sacrifice more. So how do we square the fact that killing 11,000 jobs now that there will be assuming that they're replaced with green jobs, that there'll be some lag time, and yet supposedly the American people are not being asked to sacrifice anymore because they've suffered too much already. Your thoughts on that?
Yes,
please?
thank you, Senator. Senator Stabenow feel this. Totally get the concern about job losses. Totally. But this is why President Biden's commitment to millions of jobs, infrastructure.
Mr. Buttigieg concedes that they may not come online for maybe years. And if you've lost a job that is putting food on your table now, it's cold comfort to know that years from now, perhaps in a different state with a different training within which you have, there'll be another job available.
I completely understand what you are saying. What I can tell you is from my experience in Michigan is that when we focus on providing incentives for job providers to locate in Michigan in clean energy, they came. Senator Stabenow have 48 seats, which they hope will be able to entice job providers into communities that have been left behind. So this is why.
I'm sorry because I've limited time, and I see where you're going with that. But obviously there's going to be a lag time, and it may happen, it may not happen. But those folks will not have a paycheck next week. As we all know, oil and gas is used not just for fuel, but also for feedstock for the plastics. You're sitting at a desk which is covered with some plastic to keep it from being scratched. It's probably built with certain glues that are made from the feedstock from oil and natural gas. So is it something we agree on, that if there's decreased supply, that prices typically would increase for oil and gas?
The economic rules suggest that when the supply goes down, the price goes up.
So one thing that has been just so remarkable in South Louisiana and across the Gulf Coast is there have been companies moving, reshoring, to take advantage of low-cost natural gas in our workforce in order to build those plastic lubricants and chemicals that ship worldwide, creating jobs here, and done with our environmental standards, not those of other countries, which are far worse. So net global greenhouse gas emissions are lowered. My concern is that if we decrease the supply of natural gas and oil from the United States, we either have to import it or we become less competitive because our domestically produced is now higher because of a lower supply. Is there anything faulty with that logic?
The only thing I would say, sir, is that we would want to increase the pie of energy feedstocks. And so as we consider what our energy sources are, diversifying and adding new sources.
But if we speak not of energy feedstock, but we speak of a feedstock for a lubricant, a plastic, a resin, we could grow it from corn, but then you have to have more fertilizer, which is made with methane, in order to have greater yield. Again, with that, not speaking of energy for fuel, but rather that for feedstock, was there anything wrong with my logic?
Well, here's what I would say, sir. I know, and you and I spoke about this, the opportunity to, and separate from cost, the opportunity to provide these products as well as energy in a way that reduces greenhouse gas emissions is there if we take this technology to scale. So you and I spoke, I mean, it's slightly separate, you and I spoke about this idea of blue hydrogen and how the push boats along the Louisiana coast might be, for example, a pilot for that kind of technology. I would love to work with you on that to ensure that people are put to work, but in a way that reduces greenhouse gas emissions. I think that's true for the feedstock for products as well.
And I thank you for that. I'm out of time. I will thank you for that commitment to kind of seeing what we can do. But I will say that if we have less supply of natural gas and oil, we will buy it from other countries, creating jobs there while we destroy jobs here. Thank you, Governor. I appreciate it, and I yield back.
Thank you, Senator. And Senator Sanders, I understand, is on a call, but he'll be getting back. Is that correct? And if not, we will go to Senator Stabenow.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate, Governor Granholm, you're mentioning 48C, which is a tax credit in the 2009 economic stimulus package, which I authored, 30% tax credit for retooling or creating clean energy manufacturing, and things just exploded in Michigan. A lot of what we saw came from that, and I'm so pleased to be partnering with our incoming chair, Senator Manchin, to focus this on particular states where there has been this transition, where it's so hard moving from fossil fuels, from coal, from jobs that aren't going to be there, and how do we get new jobs as quickly as possible. And I know that what we did then created jobs actually much more quicker than I thought, and so much more quickly. So I'm anxious to put those kinds of things in place as quickly as we can. Not surprisingly, I want to talk to you about vehicles and the enormous task of making the next generation of vehicles. We know that Michigan auto workers are ready, willing, able to do that, as are the manufacturers. And in fact, GM is investing $27 billion to bring 30 different EV models to the market in the next 4 years, including trucks. Same thing with Ford, investing $11.5 billion. I could do an ad and go through all of the models, but I won't. But Stellantis, formerly FCA, doing the same with electrifying their popular Jeep line. So I'm very excited to work with you, to work with the President on building back better on this plan. I will say one thing, though, as we look at our investments, and I'm glad we're making these investments. You mentioned China, and the red flag over and over again is what's happening in China on EVs. Over $100 billion in subsidies they've given just in the last 10 years. And of the 142 lithium-ion battery megafactories that are under construction, 107 are in China, 9 are in the US. We can't sustain this. We have got to lean in much more quickly. So what role do you believe the Department of Energy can play in ensuring a number of things? Our workers have the skills they need for high-tech auto jobs. Our states can build the public charging station infrastructure, which I think is really critical now to consumer confidence and availability and purchasing electric vehicles. And then also working with our universities and our industries to develop the new battery storage technologies for vehicles and renewable electricity.
Great, thank you, Senator. I'm so enthused by the numbers of the amount of investment that's happening by the domestic auto industry when during the recession we were just begging for them to survive. And as the proud driver of a Chevy Bolt, it's my second Bolt, best car ever. I just love these electric vehicles. I drive on sunshine. I have solar panels on my roof and plug the car in. It's just amazing. And I hope we can have universal acceptance and deployment of EVs. Obviously, the charging stations are a necessity so that people still do have range anxiety, and we want to make sure people can drive from coast to coast and stop everywhere in between and feel like they're not jeopardizing their freedom of mobility. Part of what Joe Biden's executive order was today was to create a whole of government effort with respect to especially electric vehicles, charging. I look forward to working with Mayor Buttigieg to make sure that those charging stations are installed along the federal rights of way along highways, et cetera. And just as sort of a separate matter from that, I think it's important for us to think about digging once and also potentially using those rights of way if we have to ground grid transmission wires, or if we would like to get broadband to rural communities. Those are opportunities while that is happening. The 17 national labs obviously are working in tandem with many universities across the country to create that next generation of STEM workers. You talked about the importance of a trained workforce, both the folks who are in the factories as well as the folks who are designing the vehicles. That's DOE's bread and butter, and those 17 labs are the jewels. And so proud of that FRIB facility in Michigan, attached to Michigan State University. And the battery technology, that too is being done distributed throughout the lab system, and it's for vehicles, but also energy, utility scale energy storage is also being worked on. And again, we've got to build those batteries soup to nuts, not just assemble the cells that come from Asia, but build the actual cells themselves inside the United States to make that full supply chain happen. I just want to say I really applaud this committee for the Energy Act of 2020, because there was so much in there that demonstrates bipartisan support for these new technologies that I think this committee can be an example of unity for the country based upon the work that was done at the end of last year.
Thank you. I know I'm out of time, but rather than a
Sorry for
question, I'm just know that was excellent. I would just say that we know that medium and heavy-duty vehicles make up 22% of the energy use in our transportation sector. Commercial trucks contribute 60% of the air pollution in metropolitan areas and so on. So I am a huge advocate and a proponent of the Super Truck program, and Department of Energy have pushed to continue to expand that. That's where where we can tackle this area around energy and carbon pollution the most. And I know that the department's set to enter the third iteration with the Super Truck 3 program, and I think it's very, very important that we be focusing on emissions from larger vehicles. So,
Agreed,
thank you.
and I look forward to working with you on that.
Senator Hyde-Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Governor Graham, congratulations on this nomination, and I certainly welcome you and your husband today to these hearings. Mississippi has a significant energy infrastructure, including the largest U.S. nuclear power reactor in terms of generating capacity, a large petroleum refinery and natural gas processing plant, and a liquefied natural gas terminal located on the state's Gulf of Mexico on our coastline. And referring to the moratorium from the White House on new oil and gas leases on federal lands and waters, the Gulf of Mexico is one of the nation's most important regions for energy resources and accounts for a large portion of our crude oil and federal offshore natural gas production. Mississippi, as I said, we have a substantial energy infrastructure which provides thousands of jobs and hundreds of millions of dollars in economic output through our ports, refineries, processing plants, and things like that. While I understand the responsibility for carrying out this executive action does not solely the Department of Energy's responsibility, but it is the responsibility of the Department of Energy for overseeing the United States energy supply. The Department of Energy has so much to do with this right now that you will be leading. Do you support this moratorium on oil and gas leasing? And what am I to tell my constituents, the fossil fuels industry, to assure them that their job security, they're secure, and that gas prices will remain stable and U.S. energy independence will continue in the years to come? What am I to tell my constituents that are depending on this?
Thank you, Senator. Two things I would say briefly. One is that the moratorium on leases is prospective. It does not apply to those who are currently operating. Offshore, I believe there are, the oil and gas industry has 12 million acres of offshore ocean water that is under lease, but they're only using half of that, or maybe even 3 million of the 12, but there are 10,000 leases that are unused. So my point in saying this is that the Biden administration is not going to take their jobs away on existing leases. That's true onshore as well. 26 million acres of public lands that are under lease, but only half of that is being used. But that's the first thing. The second thing is this gives us time to be able to work on the technologies that reduce greenhouse gas emissions that will keep people employed. And even the oil and gas companies themselves have taken on net zero carbon emission goals. They are considering themselves, many of them, energy companies now, and not just oil and gas companies. They see where the puck is going, if you will. And so I want to work with you to make sure that people remain employed, that we look at Mississippi as an opportunity to take advantage of some of your other amazing assets like the forests, cellulosic, biofuel opportunities, et cetera, in addition to making sure that the technologies that are being researched in the labs of the Department of Energy are taken to scale and deployed so that we can continue to produce energy.
And my concerns are those of Senator Cassidy's concerns as well. You know, there are things out there that we know you're focused on, but the time frame of these people that would be unemployed to that time is my greatest concern. So I look forward to working with you on that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield.
Senator Heinrich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pleasure to call you that.
Thank you.
And I should say thank you to our former chairman, who it has been a real pleasure working with, and I look forward to working with in the future. Governor, congratulations, and thanks so much for meeting with me yesterday. I especially want to thank you for offering to come out and take a look at our national labs in New Mexico. You did that of your own accord. I usually have to ask someone to do that, so thank you. You said in your prepared testimony that we in America cannot leave our people behind, and I think we all agree with that sentiment and want to figure out what is the best way to actually achieve that. You know, the energy sector is changing incredibly rapidly right now, and that means incredible new careers. We just broke ground on the single largest single-build wind farm in the history of the country in central New Mexico. But it also means job losses into the future in traditional fossil energy, and we have to recognize those changes that are occurring. Coal has experienced a dramatic decline over the last decade, and oil and gas is now entering what appears to be a structural rather than a cyclical decline, and that's separate from many of the policy or climate change concerns. So, you know, I believe that the people who work in these sectors today and in the past are like our nation's energy veterans. They're men and women who have powered this incredible nation for the last half century and gave their working lives to that goal. What investments will we need to make, specifically in oil and gas workers and in their communities, to ensure that these hardworking Americans are not left behind?
Thank you for the question. I mean, this is a chicken and egg question that we faced in Michigan. Do you train people for jobs that are not there yet? It's much better to get a job provider and train somebody for a specific job. And so this is what the efforts of the Biden administration are looking at. What are the economic assets that states have that can create economic clusters that will make them successful and then be able to partner with universities, et cetera, to train, or unions to be able to train people for good jobs in their states so they don't have to move somewhere, but every state has something to offer. You described the big wind farm. Why aren't we building these wind turbines near the wind farms in America? We should not be importing those huge, I mean, the materials work that is being done at the Department of Energy on lightweight materials, that can be used as assets to create wind turbines that are larger and give people a chance to be able to work in that industry. Bottom line is, place-based strategies are critical for areas that have been left behind, and that's exactly what the executive order from Joe Biden today has put together to fix.
So this should be an easy one. Will you commit to working with me to create a place-based plan for investing in and diversifying my state's oil and gas producing communities so that those constituents do not get left behind?
Yes.
Thank you. It's hard because history has shown that hanging on to the past, frankly, is very politically expedient. What I've seen is that doesn't always and usually fails those communities in the long run. We have to make those forward-thinking investments, or we're going to see those job losses, and they're going to be worse, and they're going to be sooner. So I look forward to working with you. This is not going to be easy, but it's incredibly important. One of the fastest ways, obviously, to drive the decarbonization and to drive the carbon pollution out of vast swaths of our economy is to begin electrifying practically everything. You've talked a lot about electric transportation. You know, today it's possible to electrify broad swaths of our economy that were run with fossil generation in the past. Heating, water, heating and space cooling, transportation are just a few of those examples. Importantly, if we do that, it creates an enormous number of blue-collar jobs, quality careers in local communities. How can you harness the expertise of the Department of Energy to accelerate that transition and accelerate the electrification of those parts of our economy that the technology is there, but there are all these friction points?
Yeah, I appreciate this question because one of, you know, again, the executive order that was issued today also created a requirement that we lead by example in the federal government, and it is the Department of Energy that will be working on making sure that we are buying American, creating demand in America for American-made products, and that we are deploying them on the vast complexes inside of the federal government. That creates an opportunity for American companies to build these products that will electrify our entire, our country in ways where we haven't seen that before. So I think that, number one, and very quickly, that can happen through the lead by example effort that the Biden administration has. And I just want to say that the signing of the executive order this week on Buy American is huge. It is huge for the signal, the demand signal, that America is serious about buying these products. But if you are a company manufacturing something, if they're windmills, you've got to make them in America. And so locating them in places that have been hurting, that's going to be our strategy. How do we get them to locate there as we electrify?
Thank you, Senator. At this time, we have Senator Hirono.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Governor Granholm. It was a pleasure to talk with you earlier. Now, to ensure the fitness of nominees for appointed positions, I ask every nominee that comes before any of the committees on which I sit the following two questions. Since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
I have not.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement related to this kind of conduct?
I have not.
So when you talk about place-based strategies, that really makes a lot of sense to me, because here we are, I represent a state that is the most isolated island chain in the world. And as recently as 2006, Hawaii relied on imported oil and coal for 92% of our energy. So we were spending billions of dollars bringing oil and coal into our state, mainly oil. So the state now gets about 28% of its power from renewable sources, but our two largest economic drivers, tourism and the military, remain highly dependent on oil. So Hawaii now has a goal to reach 100% renewable energy, renewable power, and a carbon neutral economy by 2045. That's one of the most ambitious goals of any state. The Department of Energy supports these efforts through a memorandum of understanding with the state that established the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative, which Secretary of Energy Moniz renewed in 2014. My question is, can the state of Hawaii count on continued support from the DOE as it seeks to be a leader in building a clean energy economy?
Yes.
You talked a lot, Governor, about the creating jobs and, yes, clean energy careers. Hawaii has a 9.3% unemployment rate in December, and studies indicate that about 22% of Hawaii's clean energy jobs that were lost due to the pandemic have not yet come back. And one of President Biden's key messages has been that taking action on climate change will help build back the economy and create new, well-paying new careers for people. So as governor, you know that you worked to diversify Michigan's economy with clean energy and job training. As secretary, what do you see as DOE's role in creating high quality jobs in place, as
Yeah.
you say, place-based strategies for a state like Hawaii?
Thank you. Number one, I think that to identify economic clusters that give you a comparative advantage is really important. And so doing an assessment to figure out what is it that's unique. I mean, there's so many unique things about Hawaii, but what is it that Hawaii wants to focus on to create a full supply chain there? And this is what the executive order from today allows us to really think through in communities in place. How do we encourage supply chains for the products that those communities are going to be buying to meet their demand for clean energy products? The demand signal has been set in Hawaii, and now it's up to us to help to provide the supply. And it's a supply of those clean energy products made in America, hopefully made in Hawaii if they're going to be used in Hawaii. So this is what I look forward to working with you on, is a strategy that is unique to the unique state that you represent.
So manufacturing is always a challenge in Hawaii, but if we can at least get the products from the United States, from our country, that'd be great. Now, we do a lot of research through the DOE's labs, and that's great. But it's also really important, as we enabled through the Energy Policy Act that was enacted at the end of this year, we provided funds for DOE demonstration projects for improving the electric grid, expanding energy storage, and accelerating new solar, wind, and marine energy technologies. So I'd like to get your commitment that the DOE's role would be to support these kinds of demonstration projects to drive innovation in emission-reducing technologies.
I'm excited to support that. That's right in the DOE's sweet spot.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Daines.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor, thank you for being here today, and thanks for taking time yesterday to talk about these important issues for Montana and our country. If you are confirmed, I hope we can see you out in Montana. Well, you can take a look at firsthand about some of these issues we're talking about here today. In Montana, we have a diverse energy portfolio that supports over 16,000 jobs across our state. Coal and hydro produce the vast majority of our electricity. In fact, we have the largest recoverable coal reserve in the United States. We also have 4 petroleum refineries, and we're building new wind and solar farms throughout our great state. Montana has balance. We have a balanced energy portfolio, and I believe balance is very important and needed at this time. Governor, oil and gas production and manufacturing accounted for $3.7 billion in Montana's GDP in 2019, according to the Bureau of Economic Analysis. Coal provides reliable baseload energy. It supports high-paying jobs. It's an essential part of so many of our Montana communities. For example, coal supports over half the budget of our Crow tribe in Montana. Without it, they would be economically devastated. It provides high-paying jobs in an area where there's frankly few other opportunities. In fact, if we were to eliminate those jobs in Crow country, the jobs and the revenue it would have by being eliminated would have devastating impacts to the tribe. I remember we had some protesters that broke into an energy summit we were having in Billings, Montana a few years ago. And they had big signs that said, "Keep it in the ground." And the daughter of the Crow chairman, Ms. Old Coyote, she went up to one of the protesters and said, "If you keep it in the ground, my people will starve." And these protesters quietly folded up their signs and they walked out the door. Unfortunately, President Biden has already taken steps that are very concerning for Montana. Canceling the Keystone XL pipeline 6 hours into his presidency, prohibiting new oil and gas and coal leases on federal lands, We're already losing jobs. I was on the phone last night with one of our county commissioners in eastern Montana that they're struggling economically. Our eastern part of our state has a hard time making county government budgets balance. One of the county commissioners who was going to receive $7 million a year in tax revenues from the Keystone Pipeline, $80 million a year across eastern Montana in our state. He said, Steve, we just had to give notice to 60 union workers that they are losing their jobs because of the cancellation of the pipeline. I can tell you those are 60 of the best jobs that we have in that county. So the question is, in this important role that you are looking to be confirmed into, do you believe the United States needs to completely remove oil, gas, and coal from its energy portfolio?
No, I do not. I believe, if I can just follow up, I believe that if we are going to get to net carbon zero emissions by 2050, we cannot do it without coal, oil, gas being part of the mix, but without CCUS technology. That's the important add that I would make, is without these carbon management technologies that are being researched at the Department of Energy, we won't get to the goal of net carbon zero, and I think we must use those technologies to keep people employed and to clean up and to remain energy independent.
Yeah, thank you, Governor. We'll talk about that. I really enjoyed our conversation yesterday about CCUS. And by the way, in terms of net carbon neutral, the Keystone Pipeline is net carbon neutral. That's what's got people scratching their heads, saying it's the most environmentally sound way to transport a liquid and has the least impact. In fact, it's carbon neutral as relates to that transportation means. I'm glad you brought up CCUS. As you know, after years of work, this committee passed a very forward-looking energy bill that included major advancements in carbon capture, investment, and commercialization. One of the bills that was included was the EFFECT Act. It's a bill that I worked on with both the ranking member and the chairman. This bill established a large-scale CCUS pilot project at an existing power plant. And as we talked yesterday, I think Colstrip Power Plant in Montana is uniquely suited for this DOE-funded pilot project. It create high-paying jobs in Montana, importantly, reduce emissions, and get us on this path of a common sense kind of balanced energy portfolio. Governor, would you commit to working with me and Montanans to bring a CCUS project to our state?
I'll certainly commit to working with you and take a look at it. I look forward to being briefed on it further. I think the DOE did a study on it a couple of years ago, but I look forward to following up with you and working with you on it.
Thank you. Well, you're going to find this is a great committee. We've got a great chairman, a great ranking member that seeks to find balance in terms of ways to our energy going forward here for our country. So thanks for your consideration. Thanks for being here today.
You bet.
Senator Sanders.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and let me thank Senator Murkowski for the great job that she did as chair as well. She and I do not agree on every issue, but she ran a nonpartisan, open-minded committee, and we appreciate that. Governor, the scientific community suggests to us that if we do not transform not only our energy system, but the global energy system, there will be irreparable underlying damage done to communities throughout our country and the world, and that the situation is getting more dire every day. Do you agree with that assessment?
Yes.
The good news is that when we transform the energy world, there will be dislocation, and no one can deny that. What the economists tell us is that we have the potential to create a hell of a lot more jobs in energy efficiency and sustainable energy and all the technologies you have been talking about than we lose. Do you have a sense of how many good-paying, new, hopefully union jobs we can create if we are aggressive in transforming our energy system?
I do know the goal was to create 10 million in the United States using these technologies. Huge opportunity.
That is extraordinary. And while there will be, clearly, as we make the transformation, loss of some jobs, no question about it, correct me if I'm wrong, but 10 million is a hell of a lot more jobs being created than being lost. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, let me ask you this. If magically the United States did everything we could to transform our energy system and cut back on carbon emissions, we still have the rest of the world out there. This is a problem that cannot be solved by any one nation. Can you talk a little bit, and I know we have John Kerry who's going to be working on these issues as well, but we are going to have to be reaching out in a way that we have never done to China, to Russia, to India, to Brazil, to countries all over the world to get them on board. Do you have any sense of how we can do that?
Well, part of the executive order that was issued today really emphasized this very issue, elevating the importance of our international reach and partnership with not just economic allies, but also competitors like China. And this is another reason why I think it had a lot of foresight in appointing John Kerry to be the climate envoy, I think is the title.
Czar is what I think it's affectionately called. Is that right?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was czar, but one way or the other, it's a powerful position that signals our leadership, that we are back. It was the importance of re-entering the Paris Accord as well, that we could not be an outlier in this, and we need to lead by example, but also lead by bringing our allies and competitors along with us.
Look, I mean, China is going to be hard hit by climate. There'll be sections of that country underwater. Do you see possibilities of us working together with China, India, other countries?
I do, but I know that our eyes must be wide open.
Right, right. Let me ask you this. We talk about the destruction that climate change is and will be bringing to the world. We talk about the potential of good-paying jobs. One of the things I think we don't talk about enough is that, in fact, sustainable energy can lower electric bills for a whole lot of people. Just Jane and I in our home in Burlington, Vermont, which is not the sunniest, we're not Florida or Arizona, but I think we spent something like $10,000 with the tax credits that we received to install solar. Our electricity bill has gone down, I think, by 90%. We're going to pay it off in 7 years. That means over a 20-year period, we're reducing our electric bill by 50%. Is that a point that we are getting out enough? And what are we going to do, to the average working class family who today may not be able to afford that $10,000? How do we say we can lower your electric bill if you move to solar? You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think this is a role for the Department of Energy in addition to the jobs piece. For example, the energy efficiency acts that Congress has passed over the years have saved families just on efficiency about $500 per family per year. Has been amazingly successful. The same thing, we should be taking a look at how, as a nation, we can reduce the upfront costs of installing solar in every state, because the sun shines everywhere.
So in other words, if I lend you $10,000 to invest in solar, and you don't see any increase in your electric bill, in other words, you're going to be paying off the loan rather than an electric bill, is that an approach that makes sense to you?
Yes, I would say that I did the same thing, and I pay every month as well, but our overall energy bill has dropped significantly even by paying off the loan, and that's the kind of information we want to get.
That's right, and I think we don't talk about that enough.
Right.
Lastly, Vermont has been a leader for many years in a whole variety of environmental issues, including energy efficiency and sustainable energy. I would love to work with you to see how we can strengthen our connection with some of the national labs, including the National Renewable Energy Lab. Is that something we can work together on?
Of course, of course.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is Senator Hoeven, do we have him on virtual? He's not on yet. If not, then we have Senator King. Senator King? Senator King, you're still on mute.
Okay, well, let's
You're good now. You got the right button now.
You got me? Okay. I want to join my colleagues in thanking Senator Murkowski. Senator, you've done a wonderful job as chairman of this committee. I don't care if Joe Manchin is taking over nominally in my heart, you'll always be the chair of the committee. I really appreciate the work that you've done. Governor, welcome, and I want to touch on a couple of things rather quickly. My dear friend, the senator from Louisiana, talked about natural gas prices and the effect on increases of those prices. The most serious threat to the domestic price of natural gas is unfettered exports. And under the Natural Gas Act, as you talked earlier in your testimony, you have to find a public interest, make a public interest finding. And I hope as you do that analysis, because we now have applications for, the last time I looked, more than half of the domestic production of natural gas for export. That cannot do anything but drive the price up as it has in other places in the world. So I hope that you will have your staff do really good elasticity studies about the effect of those additional export capacities on domestic prices. That's got to be part of the analysis. If that isn't public interest, I don't know what is. Will you commit to me to looking at that aspect when you're looking at these applications?
Certainly in the balancing test that's required under the Natural Gas Act, that would be one of the things we would look at.
Thank you. We've talked about wind and wind power. Offshore wind is one of the greatest potential energy sources. And the real frontier is floating, where the continental shelf is too deep. And I want to mention that the leading research on floating offshore wind technology is being done at the University of Maine at Orono. They've been working with the department over the past 5 years on the Aquaventus project. I commend that to you, because if we're going to tap the higher capacity factor and the enormous potential for offshore wind, it's going to have to be in deeper water, and that means some kind of floating technology, as you mentioned. So I would like to invite you to the composites lab at the university to see the amazing work that's being done up there in this field.
I would very much like to come and see that.
Next issue, somebody asked me my priorities on energy, and I said it's storage, and number 3 is storage. There's research money in the bill that we just passed. There is no more important work that you can be doing. And the example is, someone earlier mentioned the revolution in energy production by hydrofracking, which in fact was invented in large measure because of support from research funds at the Department of Energy. So if we can break through with cost-effective storage, that really opens the door to full electrification and full renewable electrification. So I hope that's an emphasis that you will maintain in your work at the department.
It is, and you may be aware that that President Biden has established a desire to create some earth shots, as he called them, sort of like the sun shot that was previously done that brought down the price of solar. And one of those earth shots is to reduce the cost of utility scale battery storage by 90%.
Well, that's where we need to go. And once that happens, then technologies that are based upon interruptible sources like wind and solar essentially become baseload. And that's really crucial. A final point I wanted to touch on, and I know Senator Cortez Masto is going to be following me, is nuclear waste disposal. I live about 20 miles from a nuclear plant that was closed about 15 years ago. We have what amounts to a high-level nuclear waste site on the coast of Maine. And it's because of a 70-year unmet promise by the federal government to deal with nuclear waste. I believe that nuclear development has a low carbon future in this country, but I'm reluctant to support significant new development until we meet that promise. So I hope that's something that you will pay attention to. I know Senator Cortez Masto is going to steer you away from Yucca Mountain, but we really do have to be honest with ourselves about the fact that what we have now are, I don't know how many, maybe 100 effective high-level nuclear sites scattered around the country, and that's not a safe from national security or from an environmental point of view.
I agree with you. It is a very sticky situation, and clearly we have to maybe look at what the Blue Ribbon Commission did on this, which was to engage in some consensus, site-based consensus strategies that allow us to determine where that waste should go.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor. Congratulations on your nomination, and certainly look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Cortez Masto.
Thank you. I too, let me echo my colleagues to thank you, Senator Murkowski. You've done an incredible job working with everybody on the committee to make sure all of our voices were heard and working with our legislation. So thank you for that great work. Governor Granholm, congratulations. Welcome to your husband, and thank you for taking the time to talk with me. I'm going to get right to it. Utilize some of the questions that I have that are very specific to Nevada. My colleague from Maine highlighted one of them, Yucca Mountain. We know it has been a failed policy. Nuclear Waste Act has been there since 1980. We still have challenges with really addressing the high-level nuclear waste storage that we have in this country. Yucca Mountain is not the answer. And the couple of questions that I have for you is, first, what is this administration's position on Yucca Mountain?
Yeah, the administration opposes the use of Yucca Mountain for storage of nuclear waste.
Thank you. And will you commit the department to working with Congress to develop safe and workable alternatives to Yucca Mountain?
Absolutely.
Okay. And will you be sure to have the staff responsible for nuclear waste planning and management engage with my office?
Yes.
Thank you. As well as the office of Senator Rosen?
Yes.
And then you mentioned it, the Blue Ribbon Panel. We know that the Blue Ribbon Panel made recommendations around consent-based siting process. Senator Rosen and I, along with the entire Nevada delegation, will reintroduce this legislation to include Nevada in that consent-based siting. And is that something that you and the administration would support?
Absolutely.
Thank you. And the final question around Yucca is just to make sure that if you're nominated, you and the administration would commit to engaging the state's tribes and key stakeholders on developing that consent-based siting.
Yes.
Thank you. Let me jump to one other issue, which is the storage of plutonium. Nevada has a national security site. We are very proud of it. Creates jobs. We are an important part of the national security, as you well know, in this country. In 2018, the state of Nevada learned that the Trump administration had secretly shipped plutonium intended for weapons production to Nevada to be stored indefinitely at the Nevada National Site. I agreed, and working with the Department of Energy, we came to an agreement which the state used to secure a settlement with the department last year to begin removing the plutonium from Nevada. What is the current status of DOE's and the National Nuclear Security Administration's plan for removing the plutonium, if you know?
Yeah, the plan is to follow the agreement that you negotiated.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And let me just add this. In 2014, the Obama administration and the state of Nevada agreed to establish a senior level DOE Nevada working group to address mutual concerns about operations at the Nevada National Security Site. Unfortunately, the Trump administration did not follow through on that agreement. Will you commit to reestablish the DOE Nevada working group with regular meetings of senior level personnel?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. And then let me address in general, the conversation, because I so agree. Listen, I support really a diverse energy portfolio for all states. Every state is going to be unique. In Nevada, we have natural gas, we have geothermal, we have wind, we have solar. But the outcome for all of us should be reducing that carbon footprint. And I do believe in an innovation economy is coming, if it's not already here, and the technology is going to give us that opportunity to really engage in a clean energy portfolio for so many of us. It's going to create jobs. It's going to move us in that direction. And there's opportunities to bring everybody along with us. Let me talk a little bit about electric vehicles, because this is something that I so agree with you. I have a suite of electric vehicle legislations. One of them is including the infrastructure package. If you come to Nevada, and I've offered to you before, you will see in some of our rural communities, we already have the infrastructure for electric vehicles. I'm very proud of that. But let me ask you, one of the pieces of legislation that I have and I'm going to be introducing is to establish a working group that's co-led by DOE to improve that coordination among local, state, and federal stakeholders to establish a clear strategy and national electric vehicle framework. but that includes not just cars, but buses as well. Is that something that you could work with us on or would be willing to engage?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I notice my time is up. The rest of the questions I have for you, I'll submit for the record. Thank you again and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. Do we have anybody else on the Zoom? Nobody else on the Zoom? If not, we'll go to a second round, if you're okay with that. Does anybody need a break? If nobody needs a break, we'll go to second round. We'll start with Senator Murkowski, Chairman Murkowski.
Thank you. Governor Granholm, I hope that you have appreciated the range of questions that you've heard here today. I was just sharing with my friend and colleague here. I'm riveted here in the conversation that's been going back and forth. Since I'm not really chairing anymore, I don't have to sit here, but I think what is being discussed today is so significant and it's so important to the country that I really want to hear your views here. And I hope what you have heard is that in certain parts of the country, we are very much your resource anchor. Whether it's West Virginia coal or Wyoming coal, or whether it's oil from Alaska, whether it's coal from Alaska, we are your resource anchor. Now, I'll let my colleagues speak to the manufacturing capabilities in both Wyoming and West Virginia, but in Alaska, we don't manufacture a lot. What we do is we provide for all of you so that in Michigan, in Ohio, in other parts of the country, we're doing all this Buy America, Made in America, but it's got to start from somewhere. And so when we're talking about this transition to the clean energy jobs, and believe me, Alaskans want those clean energy jobs just like all Americans do. We want to be able to access those resources that we have in the ground, whether it be oil, whether it be natural gas, whether it be coal or minerals. We want to be able to access that in a way that is environmentally responsible, that does work towards reduced emissions. But we still recognize that you're still going to need what we have. And so when we're talking about this transition, we have to realize that that transition and where these jobs are and what these jobs are going to be different depending on where we are. And so for us in resource-based states, I just hope you hear the concern. It's not that I want to keep us back in time. I want us to be able to move forward. We're a state that's seeing the daily impact of climate change, and so we know we need to be aggressive, but we also know that we have to be the provider, if you will. And so as we're talking about how you can come in and assure, whether it's the worker in Louisiana or in Mississippi or in West Virginia, that your job may change, I hope you appreciate and understand the anxiety in families, in the anxiety in communities, and in whole states. In whole states. My state of Alaska, it is our oil resources that have allowed us to build our schools, build our roads. And so I share this with you with a great deal of passion, because while we transition, we have to ensure that the assets that we have in the ground that will allow us to be energy secure and energy and economically and environmentally secure. We're going to need us. And so when I think about the asset that we have in Alaska, the Trans-Alaska Pipeline, we've been flowing oil to help the people of California so that they don't have to import as much oil from Venezuela or from the Middle East. We think that that actually helps. We think that our mineral base helps the country. It's not just jobs for us, but it helps us. So I hope that you would agree that the resource base, the assets that we have, things like the Trans-Alaska Pipeline and why it's important to keep it filled up, are important not only from an asset perspective, but for the jobs and the security that they provide to the nation.
Senator, I completely understand this, and I so appreciate your sincere passion on the part of people you represent who are full of anxiety. The experience that I had, I feel like I get this so much because the experience I had in Michigan seared my soul on behalf of workers who were feeling utter anxiety about who is ever going to hire me. So the amazing opportunity we have, as you and I discussed, is for states, I mean Alaska in particular, because of being a state where we can pilot so many different types of technology. But as Senator Barrasso has said, as Senator Manchin has said, the use of technology allows us to be able to ensure families that they can still have a job, and we can use technology to reduce carbon emissions, and that we can still use the resources we have, and we can reduce carbon emissions. I completely understand what you're saying, and I appreciate your sincere passion on behalf of those you represent. I share that, and I look forward to working with you to make sure that we keep people employed.
But I think you'll see from our Energy Act that we passed, we focus keenly on that technology.
Yes.
But again, that technology will allow us to be able to harvest these resources, because that's what we're doing. We're harvesting it. We're harvesting them in a cleaner way, but we will still be relying on this base resource. And so I again, urge you to focus on that. Mr. Chairman, if I may, there has not been a question yet raised before the governor here with regards to cybersecurity. And of course, we all know the recent news about solar winds and the hack there. It's really highlighted the need for increased coordination throughout the executive branch. I personally think that the move by the Biden administration to revoke the executive order on the bulk power system was unwise. I think it puts our electric grid at greater risk for cyber attacks. I'm concerned about that. I think this entire committee is concerned about where we are with the reliability and the resilience of the grid when it comes to cyber. And so I'm well over my time, but I would ask for your indulgence if Governor Granholm can respond to the question about grid resilience and security there, because I think it's so important.
It's very important. And briefly, I mean, we have 5 million miles of distribution wires, 200,000 miles of high voltage electric wires. I haven't been fully briefed on the the national security and the confidential aspects of the solar wind cyber hack, but clearly that's one example, and we're getting hacked all the time and attacked all the time. We will have inside of the DOE a person at a very high level that is responsible for making sure that the response to this is coordinated. We have to harden our electric grid for protection of our energy system. I hope that this is a part of the infrastructure package that will be coming from the administration as well, and I look forward to working with you on it.
I think DOE's very specific and very important role as being the sector-specific within energy when it comes to cyber is very important. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for
Thank you, Senator. We finally, from the great state of North Dakota, have gotten the computer up and running, and Senator Hoeven is on. Senator Hoeven.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me all right?
Oh, very good. I'm glad. Things are a long way away in North Dakota.
Yeah, I appreciate you and, of course, our ranking member for holding the hearing today. And Governor Granholm, it is really fantastic to see you again, and I enjoyed very much working with you in our days as governor. You were a tremendous leader then, and I believe you'll be a strong leader for the Department of Energy. So really looking forward to working with you. Appreciate our visit earlier, and would just like to pick up on a couple of those themes. The first one is something that Senator Murkowski was talking to you about, and that is that, I believe that baseload supply in terms of energy is very, very important. And one of those very important baseload sources of supply is coal-fired electricity. And we actually are working very hard on carbon capture and sequestration. I think we've got everything in place to do it, a partnership with our industry and our state. And we now have passed 45Q, which is a tax credit, because again, we can do it technologically, but we've got to be able to do it on a commercially viable basis. So we've got 45Q in place. We've got the regulatory regime in place. In our state of North Dakota, starting 12 years ago, we went to work past legislation, so we have the legal and regulatory environment in place to address the pore space. We have EPA approval. As I say, we've been working on this for 12 years. And what we need help with now are two things. One is, the front end cost to put the technology on the plants. That's Project Tundra, where we have a partnership with DOE. We need your help on that. We've appropriated money already. We need to continue to have funding there to get the front end cost addressed. Again, partnership with the state and our companies. So your support for Project Tundra is very important to us. And then also the loan guarantee, because the companies will still have to bear a lot of expense to put that, to retrofit those plants for the technology. There's two sources of guarantees. Both are funded. The money is there. One is through the Department of Energy, and the other is through USDA's rural development. Rural development, in some cases, might even be easier to access. But both those guarantees are there, and they're funded. The money is there to do this, and this is about cracking the code, just like we did with horizontal drilling. This is about cracking the code with carbon sequestration and addressing not only keeping that baseload power, keeping those great jobs, but actually capturing that CO2 and storing it safely for the long term. So I would ask for your thoughts and your commitment to help us get that done.
Yeah, I'm excited about Project Tundra. I'm excited about using your state as an example of the regulatory regime to facilitate CCUS, and I look forward to working with you on it, and yes, you have my support.
And you're coming to see us, right?
I'm coming to see you.
Like Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin's always wanted to come to North Dakota. We've told him not yet. But,
Joe, you and I.
He's doing a great job. We'll eventually invite him out. But
Jennifer and I will be there together. We'll bring John with us. The three of us will come up.
Well, that'd be great. I mean, and we'd have fun. And but I'm sorry, Secretary, your willingness to come join it, come see what we're doing?
I'm sorry.
Come see what we're doing? With or without Chairman Manchin?
Yes. Are you asking me? Yes, absolutely.
Yes, I'm sorry.
With or without him.
Yeah, we'd love to have both of you very much. Thank you. The other is in the area of the federal lands. We've got to be able to access energy on federal lands of all kinds. And, that's true on our Native American lands as well. In some cases it's renewable, in some cases it's fossil fuel. But we've got to be able to access energy on federal land safely and soundly with a good environmental stewardship. And then we've got to have transportation. And this is for both fossil or traditional energy and renewable. We've got to have transmission lines. We've got to have pipelines. So please address that, Governor Granholm, if you would.
Yeah, I'm very eager to work with FERC to get transmission lines established ASAP. I feel like this is a conversation that's been had for years about having the right transmission lines in place to take power from the places, clean power, especially wind, like you see in North Dakota, from places that are generating it to the power and load centers. So this is a very high priority to make that happen, and I look forward to working with you on that.
Yeah, we need your help. And we know that you know how to accomplish these things. We know you understand the importance of the jobs, and we understand your commitment to the environment, but we've got to have your help. And the last thing I'll finish up with, I'm looking at Governor Angus King there. He was governor with us too back in the day, and he's always looking at new innovative and creative things in the world of energy. And one of the places that's doing a lot of that is the Energy and Environmental Research Center at the University of North Dakota. And so we have a partnership on the carbon capture and storage, and we're really trying to drive that technology forward. They're also working on a partnership with the Department of Energy on renewable types of energy as well. And so I'm asking for your commitment to continue these partnerships that we have with DOE and the EERC, and even look to help grow them because of the incredible role that innovation is playing in energy development.
You have my commitment.
Again, thank you, and look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. As we continue our second round, I have a few comments to make, and then we'll go to Senator Barrasso, and then we have Senator King and Senator Cortez Masto still on the Zoom if they wish to have a second round, so we'll continue with that. Let me just say this. You and I had a great conversation on some things that's going on, and I just want to say this. Our first hearing will be next week's. Senator Barrasso and I talked about it. It's called Climate Baseline. There are so many deniers out there of what's going on around the world and whose fault it is and this and that, but what we can do to achieve truly some climate changes that we can, it'll better our environment and better for our children and grandchildren, next generation. We need to get to the facts first. I said, everybody should come to this committee with all the opinions they have and all the input, but we have to be working off the same baseline and the facts. And that's once we establish that, we think we can accomplish an awful lot. With that, I've said this, I can only talk to you about my state of West Virginia. And my state has been a heavy lifter for over a century. Fought in every war. We have a lot of patriots as far as in the military veterans, but most importantly, our coal producers have produced the energy this country has needed to defend ourselves in every war, to win the wars, propel the industrial might, and we continue to do that as one of the leading coal producers with my colleague here in Wyoming. These people feel like they've been left behind, and I think we mentioned that too. Just give them an opportunity to live where they traditionally and their heritage is and they want to be, but direct jobs in that direction. Don't just leave them in a barren wasteland. And that's where the total animosity. Right now, there are a lot of concerns that we're hearing coming out of President Biden's executive orders. People are very much concerned that they're going to leave us behind again. It's going down this path where the energy that we provided will no longer be needed. And there are those who have aspirations of elimination in energy sources, such as all the fossil fuels. Leave it behind. We're going in a different direction. The transition might happen. We don't know when it's going to happen, but we're accelerating quicker than we ever thought we would before. The only thing I'm saying on that, we think the technology is the way to go. We think innovation, not elimination, will make that happen. And everybody can be brought along and taken care of as we can direct and recognize the people who've done the heavy lifting. That's the animosity, the build-up, pent-up concerns that people have. And that's what's caused a divide in the rural and urban areas, because most of these heavy lifting states are in rural areas. Yeah. And you can see the political divide and how deep it's getting. So I think you have a golden opportunity, Governor, to really try to help bridge that. I really do. I know your personality. I know you well enough to know that you'll reach across the aisle and be sympathetic to the people that basically are saying, just give me a chance to provide for myself and my family. That's all they want. And with that, the market will change. Yeah. What they don't want is to throw them a life preserver that's weighted down with an anchor when they're trying to survive. And that's what they think has been thrown to them in previous administrations. And we've seen through even the previous administration of President Trump, we've lost more coal jobs than ever before. It's the market that was transitioning. We've got to find everything we can in West Virginia and in Wyoming and all of our energy producing, especially fossil producing states, that they have an opportunity to continue to contribute. So that's my 2 cents for what it's worth, but I can tell you, we need to bring this country together. You have a chance to help us heal that. And energy is the biggest thing that can heal us and bring us together, more so than anything else, because it's what divided us too. Yeah. So your thoughts on that, if you will. No,
I mean, you've said it so beautifully, as you do, Senator Manchin. I cannot tell you how important this is to me personally, is to make sure that we do not leave people behind. When I was in Michigan, we created a program called No Worker Left Behind for that reason, because people who have been disproportionately affected by these transitions, which are really hard, feel like they're unseen and they've been forgotten. And that's not what's going to happen. In fact, the Biden administration has pledged to commit 40% of the benefits of this clean energy transition to communities that have been left behind. And that includes environmental justice communities as well as communities in transition. And so the proof will be in the pudding. That's what I'll have to say, is we have to commit to getting job providers into communities with not skills that are completely off for the people who are there, respecting where they are, and make sure that we put them to work and train them for those jobs and give them hope for the future, and keep their children there as well, who also want to be part of a future-looking energy balance.
Well, the thing I would say to my friend, President Biden, and I know we know him well, and he's been a dear friend, but the thing of it is make sure that administration, if they want to pause and look and take an evaluation of what has happened and what direction we should be going, that's great, because we can all have input. If they come out and say we're going to eliminate this, moratorium on that, it makes it much more difficult for us in a bipartisan way to be helpful and to be constructive. And I think they're listening. I hope they do. And we look forward to working with this administration and with you in your new role too. I look forward to supporting you in that role, and I'll do everything I can to make sure that we can advance that, because I know you'll sit down and work with us. Yeah. And with that, with my partner, I turn it over to Senator Brasso.
Great.
Well, thanks so much, Mr. Chairman. I agree with what you have just had to say, as well as what Senator Hoeven had to say, Senator Murkowski just had to say, because collectively, we are the resource anchor. That was Senator Murkowski, but that's West Virginia, that's North Dakota, that's Wyoming, that's Alaska. We're the resource anchor for the country. So when President Biden says he wants to achieve a carbon pollution-free power sector by 2035, California's already committed itself to a carbon-free power sector by 2045. And last year, we witnessed the results of that. California had to impose rolling blackouts on millions of its residents. The state had to waive environmental regulations so they could run large numbers of emergency diesel generators, and even then they couldn't keep the lights on. So to make matters worse, California residents are already paying some of the highest electricity prices in the country for not reliable energy. So what are the facts that show it's possible to actually push the entire nation down this path, and to do so 10 years ahead of the California schedule, without causing the blackouts, without having unacceptable risks, and without driving up electricity prices?
Yeah. We know that there are places in the country that have gotten to that amount, but we need a lot more work and shoulder to the wheel. That's 15 years from now. I know the goal is there at 100%, but the important goal, I think, for this committee is as well the 100% net carbon zero emissions. And I like to talk about emissions because I think that is something that technology can address that keeps people employed. And so to be able to work with you on that, and I know that you are a forward thinker on technology, and you're not a climate denier. You understand the importance of technology, and that's why I'm so impressed by the members of this committee, and especially the members who do represent fossil-based economies, because I know that you see the opportunity for that net zero and the use of technology to be able to get there.
Well, then I invite you to Wyoming, to the University of Wyoming School of Energy Resources, where we have our integrated test center working on carbon capture, air capture, direct capture, and then putting it into products that are marketable,
yes,
be sold. And the chairman and I, as well as Senator Murkowski and Senator Cantwell and Senator Whitehouse, have gone to locations around the world where research is being done to do that. The X Prize competition, you may have seen Elon Musk has just committed $100 million to research to do just the sorts of things that we have been leading the way in Wyoming, so I'd welcome you there. That, to me, is a goal. Right now, I'm taking a look at what President Biden said. He said he's going to ensure 100% of new sales for light and medium-duty vehicles will be zero emission and cut the carbon footprint of our national building stock in half by 2035. In other words, his administration not only wants to create this carbon-free sector by 2035, but he wants to saddle the electric grid with the additional burden of powering most cars and trucks in the country, half of the buildings that currently use natural gas. No one wants to see a repeat of California failures. So can you point to, you said there are some places, but can you point to any state agencies or electric grid operators or utilities that have committed to use such aggressive goals without warning people of the risks that they face if they try to clamp it down?
Well, I would say, I mean, having lived in California for this past year for that, I mean, a lot of the blackouts were due to, honestly, wind, fire, because of the conditions of the climate. And it was less about the security of the grid and more about what was happening because of the warming of the planet and the cause of the additional fire danger as a result. However,
And also
I'm
the
not-
way that the forests have been managed and all the other issues
Right, and a lot of
related
that
to
was
that.
federal forest too. But yes, there has to be a better management of the forests. I don't want to argue about it with you at all. I want to be able to reach across and be a partner in achieving the technologies to get there. I do think that we have so much opportunity in building technologies and the structures, in materials, that we can reduce CO2 footprint of buildings, the building sector. I think that we can work together. I think that the example of the bill that you guys did pass at the end of last year is an example of being able to find the common ground that allows us to keep people employed, employ new people in this clean energy sector, and use technology as a way of addressing CO2 emissions.
Last year, the governor of California signed an executive order banning the sales of new vehicles with internal combustion engines by 2035. President Biden says he wants 100% of new sales for light and medium-duty vehicles will be zero emission. You're former governor of Michigan. Do you support banning sales of new vehicles with internal combustion engines?
I think it's, I mean, because I do drive this Chevy Bolt, and it's been amazing and the best car I've ever had with incredible power. I would love to see a big goal. And I know it's going to take us a while to get there, and sometimes leaders have to say big goals to move things in the direction that they would like to see. But I do know that the auto industry itself, as Senator Stabenow said, is making big investments in this, not just the domestic auto industry, but internationally as well, and it's very exciting to see.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. And I will say that President Biden does enjoy a Corvette that makes a lot of noise. I do too, and that's going to be around for a while. I don't think he has any intentions of selling his either. And with that, we have one final senator, Senator King, for second round. Senator King, I'm sorry.
Am I off mute now? Yes. One of the things we're struggling with in this hearing is that the changes in employment patterns occasioned by the movement to a carbon-free economy are obvious, and they're occurring. What's hard to calculate is the changes, the drastic changes to our economy if we don't make this transition, and the impacts all over the country in agriculture, in industry, in fisheries, in all of our coastal resources, everything from water in California, you name it. There's an enormous cost on the other side that has to be part of this equation. Those of us who are concerned about climate change and doing something about it, it's not because it feels good or it looks good on a brochure, but there are very practical national security and other implications of this that we really have to take account of and move forward on. Secondly, I just want to emphasize what Senator Manchin talked about, which is what I call stranded workers who are in traditional industries when there are changes. This is a part of our history. What's different today about our transitions is time. In 1850, something like 94% of American workers were working in agriculture in one way or another. Now it's probably 5 or 6%. That's a huge earth-shaking transition, but it took 170 years. Now we're seeing transitions that take decades, and sometimes in some communities a matter of years. So I believe with Senator Manchin and Governor Granholm, we have to be thinking about how to ease these transitions and how to take account of them and not just say, oh, well, we're not going to do this and that anymore, and those people can do something else. Often they can't, particularly in the place where they work. So we've got to be thinking about a strategy of protecting and transitioning people to a different economy in a hurry. And it can't be something that just is an afterthought or something we hope will happen by the nature of things. So Governor Granholm, I hope you'll be thinking about that in the councils of the administration, that the goals are important and important for the country, but there are going to be transition problems along the way, and they should be dealt with consciously and deliberately and compassionately. And I hope that's something you'll take back to the president.
1,000%.
And by the way, I just want to, you notice we had Governor Hogan, we have Governor Manchin, myself, and yourself. The real secret society that runs this place is former governors, just so you know.
Trust me, she knows that, Senator. Former governor. That's why she's sitting there. And we have Senator Brasso finish up.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and you'll be happy to know, Governor, that you had committed to even coming back at 2 o'clock for additional questions. We're going to be done well before that, so we'll just I do have a couple of quick questions I wanted to go to. You mentioned the importance of critical minerals, and when we talked on the phone, you talked about developing our own soup-to-nuts supply chain. Do you agree that accessing some of these mineral deposits are going to have to be on federal land? That's going to be necessary to establish our own supply, because that's where some of these minerals are.
That's certainly possible.
With regard to the renewable fuel standard, unlike larger oil refineries, the small refineries don't have the economies of scale to comply with our nation's biofuels mandate, the renewable fuel standard. That's why Congress allowed the small refineries to petition the EPA for what's known as a hardship relief. Before deciding whether to grant relief, the administrator of the EPA is required to consult with the Secretary of Energy, and that's why I bring this up. Under the last 2 administrations, federal courts have rebuked EPA and the Department of Energy for failing to account for all of the challenges that the small refineries face under the renewable fuel standard. So it's happened to both the last 2 administrations. If confirmed, will you ensure that the department fully accounts for the challenges that small refineries are facing when evaluating the petitions?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I want to talk a bit about uranium, because that's a big key part of the Department of Energy. For years, Russia and its satellites have unfairly dumped uranium into the U.S. market as they try to lower prices and command the world market. As a result, American imports over 90% of our uranium from other countries. Over 40% comes in from Russia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and America's uranium production as a result of these forced onto our markets here has dropped to levels we haven't seen since the early 50s, because they've undercut our markets in an effort to try to monopolize the world market coming out of Russia. So it's critical that we maintain our ability to produce and process our own nuclear energy. It's our largest source of carbon-free electricity, and why we've talked about the nuclear reactors and the modern and updated and some of the things that Bill Gates and others are doing in that line. So last year, the department requested and Congress provided funding to establish a national uranium reserve. So can I have your commitment that if confirmed, you will complete the establishment of that reserve, establish a purchasing program, and buy American-produced uranium this year, which is something that we passed last year?
I will certainly act upon the instructions of Congress.
Thank you. In addition to our foreign adversaries like Russia, the Department of Energy has actually dumped uranium into the U.S. market. This is something we talked about when Secretary Moniz was Secretary of Energy, and Secretary Perry in the past. It's undercut the price of uranium and resulted in the cancellation of uranium projects and the loss of lots of jobs in my home state of Wyoming. The Government Accountability Office repeatedly found that the Department of Energy's actions violated federal law. Thankfully, Secretary Perry largely ended the practice. And I'm asking you to have your assurance that if confirmed, you will not put the department's excess uranium into the market.
Yeah, I have to be briefed on this, but I certainly hear what you're saying, and I'll look at it and work with you on it.
And finally, Wyoming is the leading producer and has some of the nation's largest reserves of coal, natural gas, oil, and uranium. We have it all. We also have world-class researchers studying carbon capture technologies. We talked about at the University of Wyoming in Laramie and at our integrated test center outside of Gillette. The state is the proud host of the Department of Energy's Carbon Safe program, and it examines the potential of geologic formations to store carbon dioxide, all along the lines of getting to the goals that you've talked about. So in July last year, I've sent to the former Secretary of Energy, Briette, a letter encouraging the department to establish a presence in the state of Wyoming. So if confirmed, will you give serious consideration to this request to create a Department of Energy office in Wyoming?
Yes, very interesting. I'd love to take a look at that and work with you on it.
Well, thank you so much, Governor, and congratulations on your nomination.
Thank you.
Governor Granholm, let me just thank you again. And Dan, thank you for being here. We appreciate you all very much for the service you've given to our country and what you continue to do. Not only did you come prepared, you came and showed us the diverse knowledge you have of the energy portfolio our country needs to maintain our energy independence and a practical, pragmatic way of moving forward. So we wish you nothing but good fortunes, and I look forward, and I know that Senator Barrasso, we look forward to working with you if you are nominated, if you're confirmed, which I assume that you will be very strongly, and I look forward to start working as quickly as we can. So with that, we want to say that thank you again, and with that, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you so much.
Hold on.
8:30 tonight.
What's that? Hold on.
Submitting questions.
Oh, no, okay, I'm sorry. Members, any members will have until 8:30 p.m. today to submit additional questions for the record, whoever might not have been able to get their questions in. So we look forward to that up to 8:30 tonight. So thank you, and we are adjourned.